So we're about to dive into something pretty unusual. It's a collection of mysterious, typewritten fragments. Honestly, it feels like finding a message in a bottle, but one that washed up from just down the street. Now, instead of trying to find one single answer, let's treat this like an archaeological dig. We're going to explore these pieces layer by layer and just see what they have to show us.
Right off the bat, we get this simple hanging phrase, the disconnect between. This little line, it really frames everything we're about to see. It tells us that this isn't just about what's being said, but it's about the spaces, the gaps, and all the static that gets in between the words.
All right, so for this first part, let's do something a little different. Let's completely forget about the meaning of the words for a moment and just look at these things as physical objects. What exactly are we looking at here? Well, the first thing that just jumps out at you is the texture. You can see the heavy, dark ink from the typewriter keys, the torn, really uneven edges of the paper. This isn't some single, neat manuscript. It's a collage. You can tell each piece has been physically cut out and rearranged, like it had a whole life of its own before being placed right here.
And here you can really see how the shape of the text becomes part of the message. Over on the left, the words are all stacked up, looking kind of formal, almost poetic. But on the right, they're just scattered, like they're literally falling apart on the page. The way it looks is speaking just as loudly as the words themselves.
So this brings us to the central question that's just hanging over all of these fragments. Are we listening to one person's inner monologue here, or are we hearing little snippets of conversation that have been collected from the world? Is this a private confession, or is it some kind of public broadcast? Let's go look for some clues.
To try and find an answer, let's look at the evidence. This next set of fragments seems to be looking outward, capturing these little moments of public life. It's almost like listening to field recordings someone made out on the street.
This line is just so perfectly mundane, isn't it? It grounds us immediately. We can all picture this scene, the buzz of a Saturday market, overhearing all the local chatter. It feels like a candid snapshot, a little moment of eavesdropping that feels totally familiar. But then, just as we start to get comfortable with that vibe, we get hit with this, the undoing of little man. Whoa. We just leaped from office gossip to this heavy existential observation. This kind of dramatic shift in tone and scale is a huge part of this work. It just refuses to stay in one lane.
And the snapshots keep on coming. Strollers, parking tickets, drifters, subcultures. It's like a mosaic of city life, right? All these little pieces of 1,000 different stories happening all at once, captured by some anonymous observer. It definitely strengthens that field recording theory.
Okay, so far we've seen observations of the outside world, but now the lens turns inward. The text stops just observing what's out there and starts questioning itself, the very act of writing and art and language.
This fragment, this feels like a key to the whole project. It's a moment of incredible self-awareness, and vulnerability about being an artist, the social politics of the art world, and all the little compromises we make. That last phrase, I was not quite lying, that is just fantastic.
Here, it's like we get to see the creator thinking about their own tools. On the left, poetry isn't just words. It's a substitute for a physical place, a way to find a better word for every day. And then on the right, language is a tool that can be used for distortion just as much as it can be for the conversation with others. It's a fascinating look at the writer's relationship with their own craft.
I wish this typewriter was a talker. Wow. This line connects us right back to the physical object itself, doesn't it? There's this real longing here for the machine to be more human, for that barrier between a thought and the printed word to just disappear. It's a very personal and kind of melancholy wish from the artist.
Okay, let's move into our most intimate section yet. We've seen the outside world and we've seen the artist's craft. But here, these fragments seem to be coming from a really deeply personal internal space.
So the tone gets even more personal now. Unanimous anonymity. What a powerful contradiction, right? The feeling of being completely invisible, but in a crowd where everybody else is too. And then there's this, state betweenshipmanship. I mean, betweenshipmanship isn't even a real word, but it perfectly captures that feeling of being stuck in between places, or in between identities, just stuck on the shore between two different states of being. And finally, looking forward. It's misspelled, it's simple, it's direct, but after all that ambiguity and anonymity, there's a real sense of direction here, a simple statement of intent. And just like we've seen before, after all that abstract thought, we get this wonderful, grounding piece of humanity.
A simple, totally relatable rule for life that feels like a personal mantra. It just balances out the big ideas with a concrete, everyday reality. So, this brings us to our final question. After looking at all these pieces, the form, the observations, the confessions, what are we supposed to do with it all? I mean, how are we actually meant to read this?
Well, the work itself actually gives us a clue. If you can read this, you are already psychic. It's a playful little jab, sure, but I think it's also a genuine instruction. It's suggesting that making sense of these fragments isn't some logical exercise. It requires intuition, a willingness to feel the connections rather than just analyze them.
So maybe the point isn't to solve a puzzle or to find one single correct story. Perhaps the real value is just in the act of looking itself, in seeing the world, and a human mind fractured into all these beautiful, mysterious, and really thought-provoking pieces.
And to end, the document leaves us with this final, bold claim, especially in our supervisual culture today. It's like the artist's defense of their chosen medium, a perfect, self-referential ending that suggests that in these fragmented words, we might just find something deeper and more lasting than any simple picture could ever show us.